Hi, everyone. Welcome to the April 2021 edition of Farsight's Human News, the remote viewing news forecast show that tells you what is going to happen, not what did happen. I am Courtney Brown, Director of Farsight. Now, before we begin, let me tell you about our next major remote viewing mysteries project that will be coming out on April 15th. Friends, you need to see this one. Nazis and Reptilians in Antarctica. That's right. If you saw our last Mysteries Project, Presidential Meetings with Extraterrestrials, you were probably left wondering why U.S. presidents would make such a bad deal with certain ET groups for technology transfers that never fully happened and which put humanity in the challenging situation that we find ourselves in today. Well, now you're going to find out why. You see, after the Allied forces conquered the Nazis at the end of World War II, apparently they discovered that there was one more Nazi base that they had to deal with. And that base was hidden in Antarctica. Well, they set out to deal with that base. There was a battle and, well, things did not go well. The Nazis in that base had help, and they were under the influence of a particular group of extraterrestrials who had a long-term plan. Now the story is really complicated and the conclusion is really amazing. This was all part of a very complex poker game, so to speak, a game that was designed from the start to get the Americans to give the ETs what they wanted at a future date. And it worked. This very complicated story is one that you have to see for yourself. The mainstream will laugh, of course, and right on cue. But don't you be fooled. Be there. Nazis and Reptilians in Antarctica. April 15th, in about 2 weeks, only on FarsightPrime.com, our streaming service. Now, before we go further, let's summarize what happened last month with our Human News program. Starting with Princess Jeaneé's report, Princess reported on a volcano that erupted. The weather was cold, there was a city in the background, sirens, smoke, loud explosive sounds, and so on. Well, those were all part of the data, and in March, there was a large eruption of a volcano in Iceland. It was a big news event. It was the first volcanic eruption of that location in over 800 years, and it was about 28 kilometers or 17 miles from Reykjavik. In another report, Aziz Brown described a subject in a large structure who was having a temper tantrum. There was another person on which he was focusing much of his attention. Someone who may have been trying to help him. Well, the report matched pretty closely to a news report that appeared on MSNBC on March 5th about Richard Barnett, one of the January 6 protesters in Washington, D.C., who was photographed sitting at the desk of House Speaker Nancy Pelosi. He had a serious shouting temper tantrum when he was listening to the judge discuss the possible extensive jail terms with his lawyer. The subject was communicating remotely from jail due to the pandemic, which also seems to match the remote viewing session. Kahmia Dunson reported on an event in what appears to have been a capital city with regal structures. Someone was being judged, and it was almost like a trial, but different. Something big happened, and, well, people were upset. Well, there were a number of such meetings in Washington, D.C., which is a very confrontational place, during the month of March, so it is unclear which meeting this was. Some of the meetings dealt with confirmation hearings, so this might also be involved. Now, Melena Hall reported on what appears to be a rally or gathering of subjects in an urban area. The subjects had red hats. This report parallels the report by Trudy Benjamin, in which Trudy reported on a group of subjects who were walking their way along the streets to a structure in an urban area. The gathering had some sadness. They were focused on a central subject. Well, what is interesting about these two reports is that they parallel an event that was supposed to happen, but which was nipped in the bud by security forces. There was supposed to be a march or demonstration of this sort on March 4th in support of Donald Trump in Washington, D.C., one that was supposed to be connected to Donald Trump regaining the presidency in some undefined manner. It is unclear if Melena and Trudy were picking up on the idea of the event or perhaps the actual event itself in another timeline. If it was a big event in another timeline, it is possible that it could be picked up by one of our remote viewers. Remember that a fundamental result of the science experiments that we have conducted at the Farsight Institute does indicate that the presence of multiple timelines is a real thing. The physics of how this works is now understood, although mainstream physicists are yet to embrace the idea, and it is not unusual for there to be a delay between a new result and mainstream acceptance of that result. Now, friends, I need to take a moment to speak bluntly to you. You see, we are getting close to what you might call the final scenes in our galactic soap opera drama involving Earth, so I will not hold back. Farsight is clearly starting to make a mark in society. Many people watch our human news reports each month, and a great many people pay close attention to our monthly mysteries projects, as well as our other projects that come out monthly. So, I have a prediction to make to you. As we continue our activities, remember that in our explorations of this galaxy using remote viewing, we find no evidence of peace and tranquility. What we find is evidence of a war-torn galaxy, a virtual holocaust of nearly unimaginable proportions. Moreover, even if the worst of the fighting is not occurring at this very moment, the memory of whatever has been going on over a very long stretch of time has left its mark everywhere, and the primary focus of current ET civilizations appears to be self-defense. Well, the more Farsight dives into the depth of the history of Earth, our solar system, and our galaxy, and especially if our projects are as accurate as we think they are, there will be pushback. You see, there are two ways that ETs seem to fight wars. Of course, there is a physical fighting phase, which happens during times of intense military activity, but the reason they are fighting is to control resources, and resources are both physical and natural, in the sense of planets and life on those planets. Now, a primary goal of fighting wars is to control the life by getting the life to go along with a level of enslavement, the way humans get cows to agree to be herded and used for whatever purposes. Well, to control humans, you need to control what they believe, and that means you must control what they know. So the more accurate Farsight projects are, the more likely Farsight will threaten to disrupt the control of the human herd, and the more likely Farsight will become a target in the information war. And make no mistake about it, this is a war, whether it is the fighting kind or the control of information kind. The purpose of both kinds is the same. Friends, every single one of you on this planet, no matter who you are or where you live, came from somewhere else. No human being alive today evolved here on Earth, and every single one of you has been treated with an amnesia system that has removed your memories of who you really are and where you came from. There are no exceptions. Elsewhere in this galaxy, this is not the case. People remember who they were, going back thousands of years. The amnesia system used here has two parts. First, something is done to you before you are born into human bodies, and we went into that in our Death Traps project. But the second part of the amnesia system is a very carefully crafted system of maintaining your loss of memory while you are living the life of a human. This system is also intended to make you forget that you are not the physical body, that the real you is an eternal being that absolutely cannot die. This was all set up by extraterrestrials who have long been using this planet as a galactic prison system. Since you cannot be killed no matter what, the only thing they can do to you is to eradicate your memories and lock you up. You see, it is possible to regain your memories of who you really are and where you came from. It is possible to remember your former homes and who kidnapped you, stole your property, and trapped you here. And those who did that to you definitely do not want that to happen. The guilty are afraid. The single most important thing that threatens the entire prison system is information that could jog your memories. Information regarding the true past of this planetary population threatens to unravel the entire prison system, to make the job of controlling humanity completely impossible. You would all rise up. Well, this is the true mission of Farsight. to help you regain your memories by showing you who you really are and by revealing this planet's true past, one project at a time. This is why we are in an information war right now. The information that we publish, especially that contained in our mysteries projects, directly threatens the abilities of the extraterrestrial prison authorities to control you. If we continue doing what we are doing, this entire planet will eventually rise up against them, and there is nothing they could do to control you if that happens. You would be free. The prison walls break down as soon as you remember. So, I want our audience to expect that the time will come when Farsight becomes a target in this information war. It is impossible to think otherwise. Let me tell you how they will most likely fight us. When that moment comes, the goal will be to make as much noise as possible as a means of diverting your attention away from Farsight. You see, when people see a lot of accusations and commotion, they assume that where there is smoke, there is fire, and there must be something that I or Farsight has done wrong to discredit what we have done. People rarely seek to understand how the entire thing is a complex game of manipulation. Moreover, those who seek to cause a lot of commotion will likely have resources to keep the commotion going for as long as they think it is useful, knowing that the accusations and commotion alone are all that is needed. They will not need to actually prove anything. Finger pointing and shouting will be all that is needed, and the job will be done. Or at least, that is the plan. Friends, I want you to know that this anticipated moment of commotion and disinformation is precisely why we have developed our own distribution methods. Farsight Prime, our YouTube channel, and our own book publication outlet, Farsight Press. We can't rely on others to tell our perspective. Other media outlets will too easily fall prey to the creators of commotion and disinformation. Fear and manipulation will all too often result in withdrawal, and they will pull the mic, so to speak. And then the commotion and disinformation creators would be the only ones you would hear, and they would rely on the cancel culture to finish us off. So, know that days will most certainly arrive in which commotion and disinformation will seem loud and oppressive, and we are doing everything in our power to prepare for such moments. When those moments arrive, we encourage you to stick with us. We will still exist in our own venues that are under our control. We will still tell you the truth of what we see, and our relentlessness will eventually allow us to tip the tide in our favor. The war is currently an information war. What they can make you believe is all that matters right now. But remember that both information wars and physical fighting wars are still wars, and wars are fought to be won, using whatever is needed to do the job. Those who want to control what you know are as resourceful as they are clever. Learn and grow with us, one project at a time, but know that the future will be more like a roller coaster, not a stroll in the park. We expect to win this information war, but always remember that wars are not picnics. The battle is over what you believe. This, by the way, connects with this month's intelligence briefing that I will be hosting as a live stream in about a week. In April, I will be discussing the prison system and the way to escape it. I will also be discussing the surprising consequence to this galaxy of having a planetary population in their midst that has experienced this prison system. I think a lot of you will want to see this intelligence briefing. Now, moving on, our next Time Cross episode will come out this month, and the topic is the mystery of Pueblo Bonito in Chacao Canyon, part of a large collection of ruins in northwestern New Mexico. These ruins are not well understood by archaeologists today, but we have some of the answers, so stay tuned. Also, I want to thank everyone for commenting on our first episode of Infusion. At Farsight, we always try new things and then fix and change things to make them better. Nothing is ever perfect. Everything evolves. After listening to many of the comments for the first episode of Infusion, we decided that we need to speed up our plan to interview people involved with Japanimation and other cultures, and to more clearly connect the content of the show to remote viewing. We also need to better explain the purpose of the show idea. which is to do psychological profiles on young people who look to superheroes as subconscious means of recovering the real superpowers that they know deep inside that they actually have, but have forgotten when thrown into the Earth prison system. Remote viewing is one of those forgotten superpowers. So be patient with us as we make these changes. Finally, we are going to start releasing our pearls as standalone short videos on both YouTube and Farsight Prime. Also, we are going to add to each pearl a short explanation of the pearl's meaning. We have found that it is too difficult for people to figure out what the pearls are getting at. So we have decided to make it easier to find them and to explain the meaning behind each one. This is a work in progress, so stay tuned. And again, how do you hear about these things so that you can participate and get the latest when they happen, including our live streams? Well, to start with, we use our email list and YouTube to make our major event announcements. So there are two things that you need to do. First, you need to subscribe to our YouTube channel, and remember to click on the notifications bell that appears after you subscribe. That is the only way YouTube will notify you of new events, especially our live stream events. Just subscribing doesn't do anything. The notifications bell is the important part. But that only notifies you of things that we release on YouTube. To be notified about the things that we release on farsightprime.com, which you can watch using our Apple and Android apps or on the web, you need to subscribe to our free email newsletter found on our website at farsight.org. You can also allow our apps to notify you of our new releases on farsightprime.com, so be sure to do all three things. Subscribe to our YouTube channel, Farsight, and remember to click on the notifications bell, and then subscribe to our free email newsletter that you can find on our website, and finally, go to the settings of our app and allow it to give you notifications of our new releases on Farsight Prime. The links for YouTube and our newsletter are in the description area below this video, and the app is, well, it's on your phone. Those are how we announce what we do. We never send out spam, and we never give our subscriber list to anyone else for any purpose. Now, let's move on to this month's Human News Forecast for March 2021. Remember, we could always be wrong, and all remote viewing must be seen as an experiment, not a certainty. But look at the data for yourself, make your own decisions, and let's watch the month of April roll out to see what actually happens. We have 5 remote viewers who participated in this month's project: Kahmia Dunson, PrinCess Jeaneé, Aziz Brown, Trudy Benjamin, and Melena Hall. Now these reports are amazing to watch, and it's best if you just watch them yourself without me trying to explain them in advance. So let's begin. I will return after all of the reports are presented to help pull everything together.
First thing that I'm noticing here is that I am on the base surface. There is irregular topography in the background. There's land here. There's some sort of water in the distance as well. And there's just a lot of structures around. There is some sort of big structure here as well that's kind of sitting in the front. This structure looks like, it just looks like a huge structure. Like, it could really be anything, but just think of like a giant building, you know, like a freaking Walmart, or like a thing that all the dentists go into, like a dentist building, or like a hospital, you know what I mean, like a big building like that. That's the first thing that I noticed. It's just some big building. There's some other smaller things kind of in the background. I don't necessarily know what these things are that I'm seeing. Look like little fallopian tubes. Okay, these are different color. And then just kind of like these lines that I'm seeing as well. Little football markings. And yeah, you know, this is kind of what's here at this target. So I've got, you know, there's a good amount of foliage here. It just kind of feels like it doesn't feel like a lot of foliage, you know, kind of how decorative foliage. You know, just a little bit of something over here and a little bit of something over there. And it's like, oh yeah, we got foliage. And there's like a ton of subjects here as well. So ton of subjects outside and inside of this structure. I hear a lot of, you know, man-made sounds, a lot of popping sounds and voices. It feels like there's a lot of scattered activity, but it doesn't feel like a lot, you know? It doesn't feel like things are running all around and stuff, but it definitely feels like fast-paced things are moving in here. Sometimes subjects are moving around, other times the subjects are standing like really still, and it just kind of, there's just like this feeling that someone's guard's up. That's how it feels. It feels like this whole target has its guard up against something here. So focusing in on that feeling, I feel a main subject here, and I feel like just a bunch of other subjects, but a main subject here. And this subject feels like really mentally not there. And when I say mentally not there, it genuinely feels like this person is not like on this reality. Like you could be looking at this person dead in their face, and they could be looking at you dead in your face too, but it's like they don't see you for what you are. They don't see a human being here. They see something completely different. Just some sort of like psychosis is definitely going on, just because it literally feels like this subject is out of touch with reality and they don't know like what is going on here. But it definitely feels like that subject is like radiating all this energy. They're radiating something, and it feels like a burst of just like energies over and over again. Focusing in on the subject's face, I see a very rounded faced subject and very small, like round, dark eyes. So just like imagine a round head. It looks like they kind of have a little bit of hair, but not really, like short hair, maybe like a bald spot or something somewhere. Short hair, and just again these kind of small eyes, and nose. But then I see like a little kind of stash on him. He looks very average, I will say that, like big round face, average looking subject here. But this subject again, it feels like, what is going on in his head? Is this man crazy? He just might be. Okay, so now focusing in on the surroundings around this subject. They're inside of a structure, they're inside of this structure, and there's subjects around. I sense subjects around, but they don't feel near the subject. Like they feel like they move away from this subject here. And inside I see like a giant thing on the ceiling, like a, what's the word? Like kind of like a chandelier. Okay, so inside this structure, I see something that kind of is hanging, and it looks like, you know, things are on it, things are hanging from and around it. It just looks very extravagant, or something just kind of big and huge hanging from this ceiling here. Beneath that, I see some sort of other man-made object and like rows of things. And I see these weird markings on the back side of the wall. And I mean like, I don't want to call it a cross, but I do see something that kind of resembles one, or kind of like has just like weird things in the backside, maybe objects or memorials, there's like paintings, like, it just looks like a bunch of random stuff kind of hanging on the walls. But this kind of T-shaped symbol is something that I did notice and see. Now, imagine we're inside the structure, right? Rows and rows of stuff. This subject here, this subject feels kind of like they slowly like wander, and the other subjects feel like they're darting. So it feels like, you know, the subject is darting. And I also see like subjects kind of behind these, like onto the side, almost as if they're hiding, right? So it genuinely feels like this guy thinks he's in a dream, he thinks he's in a video game, and he is inside the structure. These other subjects are literally running away from this one. And I feel just a lot of energetics here as well, but it feels like quick and kinetic energetics. So it just feels like something kind of just, you know, like a quick pop, 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 quick popping, and just like a burst of like light and a burst of heat, and it just feels very just quick and straight to the point. And these subjects do feel like they're scurrying somewhere and hiding behind things. How these subjects feel about this subject? I do sense like there's something of being scared or not knowing. It really feels like everyone in here like doesn't know like what's really going on. It's not like they're afraid of this subject. They just feel afraid and kind of lost in the sauce of this whole target event here. Focusing in on the target event here, immediately I'm hearing popping, I'm seeing bursts of light, and I'm seeing a lot of energetics coming from this subject here. This subject here is like, again, it's like they're in a dream. And I tell you that it doesn't even mentally feel like this subject is here, but they're physically here, but mentally that subject's not here. They're in a dreamlike state. And they're in some sort of structure that looks really nice and fancy, you know. They got a big chandelier, they got art and stuff on the walls, wall markings, things hanging up, man-made objects and stuff. Rows, seat rows, almost like a wedding aisle or like a chapel or something like that. You know, just how those are lined up in rows, something like that, and then an object kind of facing all the other rows. These rows are all facing an object inside of a big structure here, and like this guy popping sounds going off. And it just feels like some subjects are here, other ones are in complete shock. I feel like some subjects aren't like mentally there, like they're literally just staring coldly, but it feels like they're consciously still aware. Maybe they've been like injured or something to the point where they can't necessarily, or they're shocked, or they're something, but these subjects don't feel safe. They definitely feel like they're hiding, and they definitely feel lost and confused. This subject feels like it's not even a human, looks like one. Mentally, he just, there's no better way to describe it than just pure delusion. Like he's tripping hard, and that guy, I worry for him. But yeah, as far as anything like detrimental happening to subjects, I do get some sort of sense that, you know, one or a couple of subjects here are unresponsive, but there's still a lot of life at this target. There's a lot of subjects here that are living, so it's just kind of hard to figure out what's all going on, other than the fact that this guy has got some sort of energetic, kinetic thing going on, popping off in all these random directions, but doesn't really understand like what he's doing. And then these subjects are all completely lost in the sauce, as well, as if they are all completely caught off guard and are just hoping for the next best thing. Focusing back on this subject because, and I'm telling you, like his mind is really hard to feel, because it makes me feel like I'm also disconnected from reality. But beneath those feelings, I sense just this profound hurt, loss, like depletion. This subject has lost a lot, and you can just feel it like in his gut, that it's almost like he's hit that point where nothing matters anymore. I have nothing else to live for type of energy. And he feels so angry at the same time, but he feels angry in a delusion. And I just feel kind of bad for this subject here. Bad for all these subjects here, but I feel bad for him. Just because I can just tell that something is really just bothering him deep down. And I wish there was something that I could do here right now. But yeah, so at this target, again, I'm seeing this big, giant structure. Feels like it kind of sits alone for the most part. There's some other stuff in the background, other man-made structures and lines, regular topography in the background, occasional tree for good looks. All the subjects are mostly inside, but there's still some scattered around out here, and it feels like they're inside something that has a big chandelier. So I'm just gonna, say that. Stuff on the walls, a lot of rows of seating, and kind of subjects scattered about inside this structure. Energetics, kinetics. Some of these subjects feel like they're hurt, Some of these subjects feel like they are in shock, and this subject just feels like he really stands out from the crowd. Like, he doesn't feel like all these other subjects. It definitely feels like it's one man over here, and then all the other subjects are elsewhere. And it's just him by himself with his delusions. A main thing that I'm just feeling from this subject here is it almost feels like this subject is out and about harming people. It does feel like the subject is harming people, but it feels like they don't think they are. Kind of like if you're, again, like I said earlier, or I think I said this earlier, like if you're playing a video game, you're playing Call of Duty. You're in Call of Duty, you're playing a video game. This subject really doesn't understand, almost as if PTSD had kicked in, and all of a sudden they're back in the war, and they're shooting at things thinking that they're in a war, but they're not. And that's exactly how this feels. Dreamlike state, psychosis, man has no idea what's going on, but he's obviously doing something that he doesn't believe he's actually doing. And that's the tea, yeah. That's definitely how this target is feeling to me.
Centrally, here at this target, I feel as though I'm inside of a facility of some sort, very large dome or circular shaped with multiple faces, white, bright, technology and electricity, rain of some sort. I keep feeling something in regards to the weather, something in regards to triggering the weather. And then there are these I think it's movement. Two different sections of what I'm seeing here. And it's like what sound looks like on a cartoon. Small, medium, getting bigger, gradually bigger, and then larger here. What sound looks like on a cartoon, and then there's this, like if a needle were to, here, frequency, vibration, movement, something scientific, very scientific here. This is extremely, oh man, like I keep saying, I'm feeling something like an earthquake here. Again, this feels like a government experience. Movement caused by something feels like shifting in Earth's core, also shifting in atmosphere everywhere. It creates some sort of a vibration or storms, maybe even an earthquake or tremors, blackouts. I'm seeing blackouts, electrical shocks or breakages. Oh, it's weird. Sinkholes. I'm sensing just abnormal situations that are happening. Seems like a series of what the hell situations happening globally, but it has a central location over a different span of time. It's not all at the one time. It's like sporadically throughout time, these things are happening, and they're getting more and more controlled within this central location. It feels like a military government camp. Odd shaped structure in the middle of nowhere, looks like a factory or a construction site. Like I said, one facility is supposed to be, it's like a dodecahedron-esque shaped face. So it's got imagine like a bunch of dodecahedrons creating an igloo, but it's not an igloo. It's, a building, a structure of some sort, but it's not an igloo. But, imagine just multi-faced, multifaceted dome or structure that's planted on the ground. And then this okay, in factory-like situation that I have here. I have photos of these things that I compiled and put together and attempted to draw, but no, it's not at all what they looked like. They're not verbatim what I'm seeing, but this is it. This is what that is.
All right, Aziz, thank you for joining us here today on this Human News that will be released for April 2021. And let's just jump right into it. What do you have for your session?
Well, so it seems like I'm getting some distant mountains, some semi-regular topography, and I'm seeing a vertical surface nearby a subject and some overall warmer temperatures in the environment. Page 5, I've got the subject and big mountains that seem to be in the distance and a relatively flat area that's there at the moment.
Okay, well, we're getting a little bit of the idea of the environment.
Yes.
So we have mountains involved in this one. Let's move on.
Page 6 is pretty much the same thing. I saw a little bit of shrubbery, like a little bit of small foliage, but otherwise pretty much a repetition of the data that we've already talked about. So moving forward to page 7, that was a flash sketch that showed that there are multiple structures, so a little bit more unraveling here with these vertical man-made surfaces. It seems like there's multiple structures within this flat area environment that we see, but there's also a good deal of irregular topography in the backdrop. So bigger mountains.
That looks like, distant mountains in the background. So we're dealing with some flat land and distant mountains, and structures in the foreground.
True. Yeah. So
okay, let's go on then. What's next?
So I did get a bit of a sense that maybe I was dealing with a decoding error, that maybe the flat land that I was sensing was actually water. And you can see that here on page 8. I've got the similar structure, irregular topography, flat land combo that we were talking about before. However, here now we have some water as the dominant element, I guess you would say, of what comprises this flatter area of the base surface.
It's interesting. That may not be a decoding error. It may be. I would think it's probably a little bit more likely that there were mountains, that there's also a flat area with land, and there's also a body of water, and you were just shifting your focus on those three elements.
Yeah. So it's a little bit more comes out as the sketches continue, but while we're still on page 8, I do want to point out that I did hear a siren type of loud sound, like sort of like an air horn type of thing, and obviously those are deductions. It was mainly just a loud siren type sound. So
yeah, but you also have here that the sound seems to be emanating from a structure that's on the water.
Yeah, so it seemed like that commotion was coming from one area. And, it did sort of seem like, if I had to guess, that was sort of directed at other subjects or other structures within the environment, which, with remote viewing aside, just any moderate level of critical thinking would probably lead to something like that. The sirens are usually for subjects. So
yeah. Okay. All right, well, let's move on. What about page 9?
Yeah, so page 9 is just another way for us to really get a better idea of what we're looking at here. I actually do label out a land-water interface, so the idea that all of this flatness is entirely water, it's sort of starting to break down here. So because I am noticing that like some of this flat area is just land and some of this flat area is just water. And you can see actually I move forward to page 14. Page 14 actually does sort of show this, and I did skip this perception. It popped into my mind, and I had other perceptions going through, and I wanted to go back to this when I was in page 8. I wanted to go back to this page 14 and make sure I put down the data, which was an image of the big mountains that we had talked about previously. However, it is a more accentuated difference between the land portion of the flat area and the water portion of the flat area.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I'm clearly seeing water, land, and mountains.
Yeah.
Are the dominant physical environmental elements here.
Page 13 just gives a better description of the idea that there is a bunch of structures scattered around this flatter environment with a lot of irregular topography around the peripheral. So there's no real distinction on what's land and water in that sketch, but that is sort of a general layout, if you will. So moving over to page 15, though, that was moving to the center of the target, and right away I'm starting to see some activity, first real activity that I've seen actually happen at the target. And there was an object that seemed to shoot upwards from far away, and a little bit more of some digging into further pages sort of led that to seem like it's coming from a similar structure in shape to the one that's being depicted on page 15. And page 15 also, you can see that the structure is, maybe this is tied to the idea that I was seeing water. The structure is sort of taking a wide boat-like shape. Yeah. And so we have, moving on to page 16 now. Page 16 shows another image of the target. However, instead of focusing on just a structure that seems to be observing the object shooting up, it seems to be this structure is actually catalyzing that upwards motion of that object.
So an object shoots up from what looks like a boat on water, but it's a structure. And some object shooting up, that seems to be a central focus of this session.
Yes.
That in this type of environment, something shoots up. What do you have in your next in your next page? Because that may emphasize what's, that page 17 really gives a better picture of this whole idea.
Yeah. So this is you see some subjects. Obviously not to scale. I don't think the subjects were really that close, but it seemed like it's a very large, wide structure. There happens to be subjects on and in the structure. And I want to point out that I was, you can see it in the sketches, I was saying that seems to be a theme for a lot of the structures, that subjects are present. But this metallic, I called it metallic on page 16, but this metallic sort of coned, pointed object or angular object seems to be just rocketing up from the man-made base surface that is one of these structures that may be on water. So
this looks like a smaller non-surface structure that's launching. It doesn't look like a SpaceX thing or a major satellite launch or anything like that. It looks like something that's small enough to launch from the surface of a ship.
Yeah, I mean, I don't want to rule out any non-hostile rocketry. So it's obviously it could be something that's non-hostile in the realm of SpaceX, NASA type of stuff. However, it could also just be a test of something that caught the news. The fact that this is it's just a news session, so it...
No, I understand. They also have a Italian spaceport off the coast of Kenya.
Oh, cool.
That's like an oil rig. It's out in the water, and they can launch things from that. It's a structure on water.
That's very cool.
And they can launch like satellites and things like that from that location.
That's great.
Having launching capabilities near the equator is useful because you don't need as much fuel to get up, because the spinning of the Earth at the equator actually makes things a little lighter. And it essentially helps to throw things into the sky. So you need a little bit less rocket power and a little bit less fuel. Whereas if you launch, the worst place to launch from would be like one of the poles, North Pole or the South Pole, because you get no centrifugal force sort of throwing the object up at the same time. Then you have to do it all. You have to do it all with blunt force, just rocket power. So it's possible. Yeah, it's that's why in the United States, Cape Canaveral is our most southern. Well, one of our, it's pretty far south, in Florida, and there are other countries that try to have rocket bases sort of closer to the equator as well. Anyway, so this is very interesting. Yeah, it's the Italians that actually built the rocket port off of the coast of, I think it's off the coast of Malindi in Kenya. And that was just because it was a little bit farther south. It's right on the equator. So the basic estimates of this. So anyway, the only reason I mentioned that is that there are other ways a rocket could launch from a structure on water. But, whether it's, and that would be a non-hostile way. But it does seem from here that we have a structure on water, and the main news event seems to be a launch from that structure on water. And
yeah. Hey, it could technically be cold, but semi-hostile type of maneuver. I mean, if it's in the news, the news tends to skew negative. So, yeah.
That's the other thing. If this is a hostile type of act, then that means that the boat could be anywhere. The boat could be It doesn't need to be near the equator at all, or it could just be anywhere, and it could be the launch of something from a structure is somehow a significant news event.
Yeah. It
in
seems
April.
like
That's
that's
what we're
it.
saying.
Yeah, it seems like that's the gist of the session.
Yeah, and the environment is got some flat land, it's got a body of water, and it's got some mountains in the distance.
Yeah.
Interesting. Well, that pretty much wraps it up, and we'll be able to see what happens in April.
Sounds good. Yeah, I'll be excited to keep my eyes peeled.
First thing I noticed in this environment is dryness. It's really hot. The temperature is warm. I keep seeing a subject inside of a base surface structure on land. The area is very warm and dry. I keep visualizing object, a man-made object that this subject is holding. There's multiple subjects on this base surface. It kind of reminds me of a team, like there's a subject in one base structure. The subject in another base structure, but the environment is so warm, it is harsh, natural. This harsh, natural environment, the temperature is dry. The subject that I'm seeing is a male subject. This male subject is holding an object. I would call it a medium-shaped object. It's very round. The emotions of this subject's personality is concerned or anxious about something that's happening in this harsh environment. I keep sensing that this subject wants something to work, or the subject is focusing on what this object does. The subject has brown hair, golden brown hair. His hair is short. His primary subject is older than me. He's older. I'm noticing that this subject is, not only is the subject concerned about what the object he's holding does, but he's also concerned for the harsh environment. He's concerned about the weather. He's concerned about the warmth of the weather, like the dryness of the weather. I feel like he wants something to work. There's something in relation to the object that he's holding that he wants to work or help the environment. I keep visualizing that he's holding something that has a round base and it has circles on it or holes in it. And that it's supposed to help the environment or change something in this location. Moving forward, a month after the target event, the object that the subject is holding doesn't work the way he wants it to. It only works temporarily. I'm not sensing that it actually worked. But there's lots of structures on the base surface of this harsh environment. I'm sensing little to no foliage. This environment is very harsh. It's like dry, kind of reminds me of a desert, but it's not supposed to be. I keep visualizing the dryness of this environment being really hot. It's like the environment is changing. The temperature is changing, the location is changing, and the main primary subject is sad because of the change that's happening in the environment. The subject is moving inside of the base surface structures here so that he can experience something new. He's not used to being in this type of environment, but he's moving into this environment to experience something new or to feel something different about how this environment is. But I'm sensing discontent and sadness being here. There is level topography. There's little to no foliage. The environment is too barren. It's like there's structures on the base surface, but it's hot and it's like hot and dry. The structures on the base surface here has subjects on the inside. These subjects are alive and these subjects are safe, but I keep visualizing this object being the reason why this primary subject is here. This object is shaped like it's supposed to collect water. It's supposed to go under the ground, has holes in it so that water can disperse throughout under the ground, like a man-made well that you can move around anywhere or something. Like he's holding it. It's not big, but it doesn't work. It works in a way. It works in a way, but it doesn't work the way he wanted it to or the way he invented it to be. But the subjects nearby are anticipating for the device or the object he makes to work, but it doesn't. It doesn't change the warmth of the environment. It doesn't change how hot the environment is. It doesn't change the dryness of the area. It's like it's just there. And this subject is disappointed about it. And this subject is disappointed about it. The personality of this subject is very trustworthy. He's adventurous. He's in a new location. He's not used to this location. I'm sensing he goes to different locations just to do this. But this environment, this specific environment is too hot. It is too dry and it's changing its temperature too quickly for this device to even work. There's not enough of these devices for the environment to change. The environment is too wide. The environment is too harsh for this man-made object that he made to work. The personality of him has good intentions, but the thing he's trying to do doesn't really work for the way he wants it to work. It's like he wants water to flow through this and flow around it because the water's in it, but it doesn't work that way. It's like it's like he wants, whenever it rains, the water to collect inside of this, and then it fills up and goes into these holes, and then the water disperses outward or something. It just doesn't work.
For my first visual, I'm seeing a lot of natural flat land. In this area, just natural flat land. Ground texture is very sandy, and I'm getting a stream of water on the side. I noticed structures on the surface. It's like a boardwalk of structures next to this sandy water area, and everything is flat here. Lots of subjects near the structures, not a lot of subjects near water, where there's normal activity in this area with so many structures going through this boardwalk of subjects in this area. Not too far in the distance, there is a mountainous area. Large peaks, large hills, and there are foliage between area. And there's busy activity along this area. So I'm getting lots of subjects here in this flat area and going more towards an upper part of this surface. There's lots of moving structures and subjects between these mountains. Looking towards down in the area, it looks like a city. This area feels very popular in the area down below where it looks like it's a city. So many subjects are in this area. And there's big structures between hills and between mountains. But down below, back in this area, it looks like a city. There's tall peak structures. And there's short, wide structures. The city is not as big, but it spreads out throughout this whole flat ground area. The structure just spread out. A lot of noises in this area, but all the subjects are moving up from this flat area near this water. From above where these hills are, I'm seeing subjects. A feel of worry. They're all sitting around. There's this structure, not too big, but enough for subjects to go inside. Not a lot of subjects, and there's these peak-shaped tents or some area where subjects are walking in and out. It's very busy. And I see and feel warm and heat from this fire. And there's fire around here. Feels of a start of a fire. Subjects safe for now, but they're not safe at all in this whole wide, beautiful place, but it's dangerous, and I'm getting a lot of natural shake movement from that flat land near the sand and water. I'm seeing motion of movement, natural movement from below. For my last visual, here's the surface. Where it's very natural and sandy. And I'm feeling of movement, a slow movement, as in like something is sinking below. It's very wet here, a lot of water. Seems like the water is moving in over and having the sand go under. And this is going towards near those man-made structures. So I'm getting a feel of not a lot of damaged structures, but damaged surface. It's like most of these structures that are near this water area it's not here anymore. A feel of shaking, rumble, ground, earthquake, but worse, because it's getting flooded here and just getting water. Looking from a far away and just looking down at everything, this is what I see. So I'm seeing this shape of a surface. And this whole side has water all through this side, and there's only a few structures near that water. But this area used to have a lot of structures, but there's nothing but water here. And there's just sand and dirt. The city area still is here. But a lot of, it's almost like half of this whole land is in water, underwater. And that's what I have for this session.
Okay, so let's draw some conclusions from these data. April 2021 is going to be an interesting month. First of all, note that the sessions by PrinCess and Melena have some similar elements, major Earth movements. So there may be an event, or perhaps two events, that have those elements. The reports by Aziz, Kahmia, and Trudy all seem to focus on different events, and this may indicate that there is no single major event that dominates the news in April. Knowing even this is important, and it also makes it especially fun to locate each event when they happen during the month. So that is it for our April 2021 edition of Farsight's Human News, the news before it happens. Thank you for watching. Please also join us next month in May 2021 for another look into the future of Earth humans. Also, be sure to look for the new releases on FarsightPrime.com this month, including our live stream events, the Farsight ET News, the live intelligence briefing with myself where I talk about escaping the prison system, the next major new mysteries project to be released on April 15th, Nazis and Reptilians in Antarctica, the new Time Cross episode focusing on the ruins in northwest New Mexico in Chacal Canyon, as well as new Farsight economic forecasts. I am Courtney Brown, Director of Farsight. Stay ahead of the curve. Let the mainstream fade in the dust. Be there now.